Greiner Talks, about sustainability and transformation. A Greiner podcast episode.
How to change, how to create a sustainable future. That's what we are discussing here. My name is Alexander. I'm part of the sustainability team at Greiner, and right now I'm here in Vienna sitting next to a true legend of motorsports. Already in the 1960s, he started out as a rally co-driver, and he then became incredibly successful as the head of racing teams for the likes of Peugeot. For more than a decade, he was the president of the International Automobile Association, FIA. He was the CEO of Ferrari, and under his leadership, Michael Schumacher celebrated 5 consecutive world championships in Formula One. Today, he is the United Nations Secretary General Special Envoy for Road Safety. A very warm welcome, Jean Todt.
Thank you. Good to be with you too.
Welcome to Vienna. How was your trip?
Good. Good. It was not a big trip because I left this morning from Geneva and I arrived 1 hour 30 later in beautiful Vienna with amazing sunshine. I love to come to Austria.
You are here in town for the Green Peak Festival, a sustainability festival where you will be speaking about green mobility, about road safety. And that's my first question to you. Racing, mobility and sustainability, how does that go together?
So, my career, you were mentioning earlier in the presentation, late 60s. So we are talking about 50 years. So, of course, motorsport, motoring, mobility has changed a lot over the decades. In a way, motoring is quite new. It's just over 1 century ago. And when you see, a car 100 years back, and if you check through every decade, it's fascinating, the progress which has been done. But of course, it has also been one evolution around the planet. So since a few years, rightly, we are talking about climate change. We are talking about this threat around the planet and what can be done. And of course, everybody has a responsibility about that. Not only the governments, but also any citizen around the world. And then if you speak about motorsport has also a responsibility. And at the time when I was president of the FIA, we founded what is called Formula E, which is an electric single-seater category for the cities. Why? Simply because 10 years ago, when we decided this category of motorsport, we wanted to give more interest about electric car, which was started in the cities. And why it is probably more important to have electric car in cities, because the autonomy is still limited, even if progress has been done, and recharging time also has been an issue. But then if you speak about Formula One, in 2014 it was introduced a new motorization with what we call hybrid engine. And then we have been working on zero emission fuel, green fuel. So motorsport is a show, but is also a laboratory.
You have mentioned the evolution of motorsport, and I'm curious to know from you, when was the first time that you were considering or thinking about the environmental aspects and sustainability in your career? Was that in the 70s, 80s, 90s? When did that come up and start to take off?
No, I will say it's recently, over the last 15 years. But something is sure, is we speak about sustainability, but we should speak also about safety. And you will remember, motorsport was the most dangerous sport. And motorsport remains dangerous, but so much effort has been done to make motorsport safer, which is also absolutely essential. And again, taking Formula One, between 94 when it was the death of Ayrton Senna and Roland Ratzenberger in Imola, Since then, in 28 years, you have had one fatality in Formula One with Jules Bianchi in Japan. I would say one is still too much, but compared to what it was. So I take, again, motorsport has to be considered as a laboratory at all the level.
To summarize, over the last, let's say, 28 years in Formula One, it has become a very, very safe sport.
Much safer. I think it will be very presumptuous to say that it's bulletproof. It is not, never will be. But still, it is much safer because so much effort has been undertaken on the circuit, on the cars, on the driver equipment at all the level to make it safer.
Looking of the future of mobility in regular road traffic, do you think there will be a day when there are no more fatalities in daily traffic? Will we see that?
I wish it would. But, we must be realistic. Here we are in Vienna, and I come from Geneva this morning. But every year, 1.3 million people die on the roads. Between 30 to 50 million people are injured with disability. And 90% of those figures are occurring in low and middle income countries. So when do you think Bangladesh, Nepal, Kenya, Ivory Coast, Burundi will have access to the new generation of car? It will take time. You know what happens? The car you are using here, after 7 or 8 years, you cannot use it anymore because it's considered too old. So what happens? Those cars go to the countries where you don't have public transportation. So we must be realistic. In an ideal world, it will not be any congestions. It will be all perfect, but it cannot be the case. So, just to answer to your question, is it possible to have no fatality? The answer is no. But is it possible to do much better? The answer is yes. And that should be the challenge. In a way, as the European Union did 40 years ago, in Austria or any country in Europe, it was 3 times less vehicles and 5 times more victims. So it means that things have occurred. But unfortunately, in the low and middle income countries, it has not yet occurred, and they are about 30, 40 years behind. So, it's very often, because it's beautiful to have big ambitions, big challenge, but we must be realistic. Is it achievable? Yes or no?
And you're mentioning so many aspects here that are very important for the future of mobility. We have heard about electric cars, and there's hardly any topic that stirs emotions as much as electric cars. But is it really the answer for the future of mobility? You were mentioning the developing world. Electric cars are quite expensive. Also, compared to public transport, electric cars are maybe not the most safe mode of transport.
But we have other ways of making things cleaner, and which has already started. Green fuel. Green fuel is available. Hybrid engine. Hydrogen is also a new way of having a cleaner mobility. Cleaner cars, cleaner motorbike. So, in a way, it's fascinating because I go back to motoring. It's quite recent, just over 100 years. But if you see all the progress which have been made decade by decade, it's absolutely sensational. And, today, in our countries, Austria, France, Switzerland, it's obvious what you are. If you are driving a motorbike, you will put the helmet. In the developing world, they don't know what is one helmet.
Still, I have to ask you again, if individual transport, cars, electric cars, motorbikes, even if they are powered with sustainable fuels, is that the future, or should we put more effort in public transport, in trains, in safe modes of transportation, in mass transportation?
Of course. In a way, public transportation is safer, is cleaner, will reduce congestions. A lot of changes have occurred. You see now in the biggest cities around the world, it's much more restricting for the car, for the motorbikes. You have facilitating access to bicycle. But, all that also may have counter effects. Again, taking countries where so much effort has been done on road safety like Austria, because we are in Austria. I mean, you have new threats. E-scooter, it's green, it's clean, but it's dangerous. And you have kids, they are allowed to ride an e-scooter from 12 years old age. It can go, I mean, officially it's maximum speed is 25 kilometers an hour, but they can go quicker. They are able to use that without helmet. They go on pedestrian areas. They go without taking into consideration of pedestrian or of other traffic. So, I mean, that's a new threat which has to be considered. So, in a way, we are facing a new style of mobility. I applaud the bicycle lane. You know, that is absolutely important, but still we should be more ambitious. You know, people are still reluctant to put a helmet on a bicycle. I think it is essential.
And then there is another huge change coming about in mobility, and that's artificial intelligence. There's already lots of tests going on of self-driving cars, autonomous cars. Do you think that we will still be driving a car in 10, 15 years, or will a computer drive our car?
So I think you forgot what I just told you. 90% of the victims are occurring in the developing world, where they are 40 years behind. So do you think you will be able to have autonomous car in Bangladesh in 10 years? That's a question I ask you.
I think that's a very good question. And my question back to you would be, do we have to support the developing world to accelerate that transformation? And if so, how can we do that?
Yeah, we need to support. That's a good point. You know, we need to support, we need to give them a hand, and we need to tell them or to support them to achieve what needs to be achieved. Incidentally, that's why I'm honored to have been appointed as the UN Secretary General Special Envoy to work with the developing countries to ask support, collaboration from developed countries, really to engage and to change what can be changed. And we know what to do. We have a latest example, which is COVID-19. COVID-19, the planet has been scared because they were thinking, I can die. So everybody has put the mask anywhere around the world. So we need to create this same
momentum,
the same, feeling from people to realize that the road can be dangerous. Because if we feel, okay, we are safe because AI is coming, but sure, could come. Autonomous car, it could come. Autonomous transportation also will come very quickly. You know, I'm sure that very quickly we will see autonomous transportation in airport, in cities. But that's great. That will probably help on congestions, on traffic, but it will not help the world which is needing support.
One of my previous guests in this podcast, he's a professor at Harvard University. He said, human beings act like this. If you don't have immediate pain, if you don't have immediate toothache, you will not go to the dentist. But if you feel the pain, if you're crying because of pain, then you will go and change things immediately. Isn't that somehow related to the sustainability debate?
I like this comparison. But, road safety is a silent pandemic. And we need to wake that up. And very often, you have people who are addressing, private sector, NGO, they're addressing that because they have been hurt themselves by somebody around them who has been hurt on the road. And they want to do something. But the whole idea is to do before. You know, we don't want to see victims. So if we don't want to see victims, we need to act now in order to make roads safer around the world.
And there's a very strong connection to climate change, to sustainability. We have to act now, and we have to start that transformation now or accelerate it even more if we want to keep global warming below 1.5, below 2 degrees. Do you think that the mobility sector, also looking at the developing world, is going quick enough?
Those kind of crucial problems which are affecting any citizen around the world should be the responsibility of everyone. And sometimes we rely too much on governments, on global organizations to say, okay, that's their duty. I don't agree with that. I mean, it's our duty to contribute, to be a good citizen and to participate to make the world cleaner and safer.
And coming back to Formula One, now this motorsport has the goal to achieve net zero carbon footprint by 2030, 100% sustainable fuels by 2026. Do you think that this is realistic? Is Formula One achieving that goal?
It is, and you know, it's what I was mentioning earlier. You have the best engineers, you have the best research people, so they will be able to perform better. And performing doesn't mean only to be quicker on the lap time, but also to be better and to be safer for the environment and safe as a safety measure.
I'd like to bring up another topic that is close to my heart, motorsports and gender equality. And if I'm correct, in the history of Formula One, there have only been 2 women who ever qualified and started a race. Why do you think is it so difficult to achieve gender equality or to have more women driving racing cars, being part of Formula One? Why is it difficult to achieve gender equality here?
I mean, first, probably not enough has been done, you know, and I must say that over the last years, much more has been done to facilitate access to motor racing to women. Whether a woman has the same skills to pretend winning a Grand Prix in Formula One, my honest answer, I don't know. I would love to see a woman competing at the level of the men. I think a chance should be given. Probably it will take time, but it can happen. In some categories of motorsport in the US, it has happened to have some women at the level of the best male drivers. You know, I mean, times are changing, and I really hope that it will be possible. But unfortunately, it will take still some time.
Right now, there is no women competing in the Formula One World Championship. If you would have to make a guess, when will we see a woman competing with all the men out there?
All depends what will be done to build this academy. You know, it maybe starting now. You know, it can be a female who is now very competitive in karting, who in 7-8 years could reach Formula One. But it's you have to go from category to category. So you start in karting, then you go to Formula 4, Formula 3, Formula 2, and Formula 1. You must not forget that you have only 20 seats in Formula 1, and that's the pinnacle of motorsport. So it has been, at the moment, an advantage for the men. But as I said again, I would love to have a potential Chinese champion in Formula One, Indian. You know, we are talking about gender equality, but you were mentioning diversity is absolutely essential. So far, probably, it has been more drivers coming from Europe. You know, it's fantastic to have had a driver like Lewis Hamilton. You know, first time colored drivers was able to be the best for many years, but there is still space for improvement.
I fully agree with you, and we face somehow similar challenges as a company where we want to have a very diverse workforce, we want to have an inclusive environment, and gender equality is one part of that. But as you have mentioned, it's on many other dimensions as well. And I think we have to work a lot and hard on it to improve things here.
I do agree. But, you know, I'm blessed because I have a wife with Chinese, with kicking the heart of a lot of men, sometimes my heart as well. I think it is a good challenge.
And Jean, you have had an incredible career. So I have one question to you. What would you tell your 20-year-old self today?
To myself?
Yes.
keep pushing, as I do every day. Be passionate, humble, having doubts, that we can always do better. I think only the mediocre have raised their maximum, so we can always do better, and never give things for granted, and be committed. When you wake up in the morning, you must be committed. When you go to bed in the evening, you must still be committed.
And I guess you have also had very challenging times in your life, as everyone has. Do you have any advice how to keep up in tough times when you face personal, professional challenges?
Probably, never resist, be strong, never give up. Never give up, and never lose the reality. Keep always your feet on the ground, because things can change very quickly.
And your 20-year-old self, would you go into motorsport again, or would you follow a different dream or career?
I had always the passion for cars, for motorsport. I still have the passion. In a way, life is made with chapter. So my first chapter was, my dream was to be, when I was 20, to be a talented, successful racing driver. Finally, things changed. I became quite a successful team leader, in rallying, in sports car, in Formula One. And then I thought time came to give something back. Because I think if you have some success in your life, it's time at a certain moment of your life to give something back. That's why I started to found with a group of friends a medical institute, because when we are talking about what is happening in the planet, probably one of the most unknown thing is human being. How are we going to progress on neurologic disability, Parkinson's disease, Alzheimer's disease, multiple sclerosis disease? So with a group of friends, we discussed about that, and today we have a foundation in the biggest hospital in Paris with 750 research people on those kind of illness. And my job was very much around circuit racing, rallying. So I had a certain experience on the road, on safety, and I decided to give more time on addressing the situation on the road, and try to be a little contribution to make sure that it will be more awareness on that. So that's why, when I was 20, probably I was not thinking of that. But I think older you get, more responsible you get, and you get new challenges.
I think that's a very optimistic and inspiring ending for this conversation. I think there's really nothing one can add here. So I just want to say thank you very much, Jean Todt, for taking your time and for this conversation here in Vienna.
Thank you.
And thank you everybody for listening, for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this conversation. Please subscribe to our podcast, stay tuned, and have a safe day.
Greiner Talks, a Greiner podcast. Subscribe now.